Good evening and welcome to the Township of Woolwich Council meeting on this December 14th, 2021. Before we begin, I will remind Council that this portion of the meeting is being recorded and live streamed to YouTube. And I'll do a roll call of Council for the benefit of those watching. I, Mayor Shantz, am present and chairing this meeting. Councillor Martin. Councillor McMillan.
Present.
Councillor Merlihan. Oh, you froze. I think.
Present.
Here we go. Councillor Redicott.
Present.
And Councillor Shantz.
Present.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to reconvene in open session, please? Moved by Councillor Shantz, seconded by Councillor McMillan. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We'll start with the land acknowledgement and a moment of silence. The land on which we meet has been here from time immemorial. People have inhabited southern Ontario for about 10,000 years, and we acknowledge the Attawandaron, the Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples who lived here when settlers arrived and who share this land with us. May we learn together to care for and respect each other, our flora and fauna, and the land we inhabit together. This is the season when Christians celebrate the birth of hope through love. Yesterday, I was at a pandemic control group meeting as we heard more about the spread of Omicron, that newest variant of COVID-19. I left it feeling frustrated, angry, overwhelmed, and somewhat defeated. And I know many of you people who are watching here tonight are feeling some or all of those emotions. This mutation is much more contagious, and we don't know for sure how severe it could be. We also heard that hospitals are filled to capacity or beyond as they try to catch up on heart surgeries and cancer surgeries, other procedures that have had to be postponed because we were dealing with some very sick folks with COVID and some very sick folks who are no longer COVID positive, but who have long-lasting implications from the disease. But we do have hope. This year, we have the gift of a vaccine that can decrease the impact of COVID, including the Omicron variant. We each will make our own decisions regarding vaccines and how we manage ourselves over this holiday season. This is a season of love and goodwill. And so let's try to remember that this is a season born of love. Protecting yourself also protects those around you and just might save a bed for that neighbor who desperately needs life-giving surgery. So let us all take a moment to reflect on how we will celebrate this season with hope and with love. We'll have a moment of silence, please. Thank you. Disclosures of pecuniary interest. Pat, go ahead, Councillor Merlihan.
Thank you. Through you. 9.1, the affordable housing talk by Dan Dredger. Mental Homes is a client.
Thank you. I also have a conflict of interest on that one as my husband is doing work for Spruce Lawn at the moment. There are no items to come forward from closed. We need a motion that the following minutes be adopted as presented. Council minutes from November 30th, 2021, and Committee of the Whole minutes from December 7th, 2021. Would someone like to move those? Councillor McMillan, seconded by Councillor Shantz. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We have a public meeting tonight. Sorry, Councillor Shantz, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. In the meetings there, I was talking about the Kitchener-Waterloo Community Fund grants, and I didn't see anything on the agenda for that blanket policy or blanket resolution. I just didn't want to miss out on that. That's part of the minutes.
Do Oh, it's under unfinished business.
Okay, thank you.
And if we miss it, just jump in and let us know.
No, I'm sure it's under control.
Okay, thanks for the vote of confidence. Okay, our presentation this evening is on the proposed merger of Waterloo North Hydro and Kitchener-Wilmot Hydro. And I will turn the meeting over to Richard to introduce this report. Mr. Petherick, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So as council is aware, you gave approval back in October for staff and for the Waterloo North Hydro HOCO to proceed forward with the merger. And part of that is to go through a public engagement process, and then as well as refining and finalizing the merger participation agreement, as well as the unanimous shareholders agreement. So those have been completed. And so we have with us tonight, David Petrus, who is the chair of the Waterloo North Hydro HOCO, as well as Rennie Getchin, CEO for Waterloo North Hydro. And they're going to be going through the presentation and telling us about the results of the public engagement piece.
Thank you, Mayor Shantz, councillors, staff, for meeting with us about this merger of Kitchener-Wilmot Hydro and Waterloo North Hydro. A bit of context, the discussions have been ongoing on this project for almost 2 years. Part of that process has been detailed financial modeling, and that was undertaken by the two utilities with some help from professional financial advisors. And the modeling has demonstrated that there are some financial advantages to merging. And there was also detailed legal and technical due diligence that was undertaken. If completed, the merged utility will continue to be locally and publicly owned, and it will be the 7th largest local distribution company in Ontario. And because we might bring these two utilities together, they would then together have the size and the resources needed to permit accelerated innovation and new services, and also to assist with a transition to a lower carbon economy. As was mentioned, in October of 2021, Council approved a non-binding memorandum of understanding regarding the merger, and then asked us to undertake a public engagement process and to prepare the formal legal documents. With respect to the public engagement process, the utilities retained a firm called National PR to assist with that exercise. And there were two purposes to the public engagement. One was to provide information to the community about the merger, and then secondly, collect feedback. And that occurred through the use of a website, advertisements, social media, and a public information session. And the full report from National PR is in your package, but it concludes by saying, quote, all communications and public engagement activities have been met with relatively positive community feedback, as well as fair and factual media coverage. Based on the interactions and questions received during the 4-week public engagement effort, we conclude that there are no community concerns related to this proposed merger. In connection with the binding legal agreements, the merger participation agreement and the shareholder agreement, the two utilities and their boards worked closely and extensively with the 5 municipalities, lawyers, financial advisors to finalize these agreements. At a very high level, the merger participation agreement sets out the business terms of the merger, including the ownership percentages. And it has a process for making any necessary adjustments between the 2020 valuations that were used to combine, to establish the basis to combine the utilities and the actual valuations at the time of closing. And it also provides that closing will occur after the Ontario Energy Board has approved the merger. The shareholder agreement, although now final, will not be signed now. It will be signed when the transaction closes after OEB approval. And it focuses mostly on governance arrangements. And it talks about the size and the composition of the board, and also the manner in which major decisions would be made by the combined utility. Now, if the merger were to be approved by all 5 municipalities, the next steps would be first to sign the merger participation agreement, second, to complete the application to the Ontario Energy Board and submit it to the board. We expect that would happen in January. And then while the Ontario Energy Board is considering our application, we would be working on other things that need to be done so that the merged entity can hit the ground running when the transaction closes. Things like determining the composition of the boards, the chairs of the boards, who the CEO will be, the name for the combined business, and some detailed integration plans to put the 2 utilities together. The board of Waterloo North Hydro Holding Corporation unanimously recommends the merger and the execution of the merger participation agreement and the shareholder agreement to council. And in your package, there is quite a detailed resolution, and it's detailed for various legal and regulatory reasons, but essentially it calls for the approval of the merger, authorizing the execution of the merger participation agreement and shareholder agreement, and the application to the Ontario Energy Board. That's our brief presentation on this matter. We'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Questions, council? For either Mr. Petrus, Mr. Gatien, or Mr. Patrick? Okay, Councillor Martin, go ahead.
Thank you. Just out of curiosity, during the 4-week public engagement, did a fair number of people in the public get involved and comment?
I think it was quite limited. Renee, I don't know if you have any numbers at your fingertips.
For you, Mayor Shantz, to Councillor Martin, we had a public information session. I believe we had 17 members of the public that attended that. And then the website itself had a lot of people that went to the website. We only had 15 queries from members of the public that were either providing a comment or asking a question.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Merlehan?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Shantz, through you to either Renee or David. I'm just wondering if you could point to a couple of other maybe mergers across Ontario that have happened over the past couple of years, and whether or not you looked at the subsequent years following the initial merger, and if those ended up being positive. And along the same lines of what Waterloo North Hydro and Kitchener-Wilmot are proposing here, do you see some areas that you can look at as a success story in the merger for the benefit of the public? And are we kind of following in the same vein as some other LDCs that have previously merged?
Renee's best positioned to answer that. There have been quite a few mergers, and I think the degree to which it's viewed as a success depends very much on the merger partners participating in a particular merger. But Renee, could you add to that?
I can. Through you, Mayor Shantz, to Councillor Merlehan, there's been a number of them, as David said. The ones that are most similar in size to us, unfortunately, is one that's ongoing right now, which is south of us, and that's involving Energy Plus, which is the combined entity of Cambridge, North Dumfries Hydro, and Brant County. And they're merging with the utility for the city of Brantford, which is Brantford Power. So they're ahead of us by about 6-8 months, but they're doing very much a similar thing. There's a company called Lexicon that is out in the eastern part of the province. We're going to end up being close in size to them, and they've been merged now, I think, for about 3 years. And I believe they're just starting to come out of some of their integration and synergies and starting to see some of the good effects of having merged an entity. I think the things that David mentioned is there's a couple of things. We should expect to lower our operating costs per customer because we can have some savings in systems we use and other things we do. And then the other things is we'll be better suited to provide new services to customers as technology changes and new things come along. And we're starting to see some of those things out of Lexicon. Another company is Integris, but that was more a larger company that was probably about the size of Waterloo North Hydro merging with a much smaller one. And you know, most of the things were absorbed into Integris as opposed to we're much closer in size, and there's a number of things we do that Kitchener does not, a number of things Kitchener does that we do not. So we really are going to benefit from some of those things. I hope that one helps.
Yeah, okay. I guess being more specific to Woolwich Township, you know, as partners, we can expect our dividends to increase over the years. But what about our users? What kind of immediate benefits or long-term benefits can Woolwich residents see from the merger?
So if I might, one of the things that we do, there's a few things that are where we're leading in some of the applications of certain technologies. And right now we're of a size where to get that done, we have to ask some staff whose regular job is certain things for running the business to take on this other new technology at the same time. So it's sort of a side of their desk kind of projects that they do. They can't dedicate full time to it. And we don't have enough resources to move things along. An example is one of the systems we have that is self-healing, automatic restoration of service when we have an outage on the distribution system. That's taken us several years to get there, and it's been slowly done by a couple of good folks in our engineering. As a combined business, we can accelerate and get those things on a little faster. And an example is this year we're hitting about, customers would have seen about 29 to 35% more outage minutes if it wasn't for this system. So it's taken us a while to get there, and we have more advances to do with that as we go along. The other part is I think customers will be starting to do their own generation. And as they start to do some of their own generation or solar arrays and battery storage come down, we'll be able to help them with that much more so as a bigger combined entity than what we could on our own as Waterloo North Hydro.
Okay, I guess stability is important. Future growth is important. I think a lot of people, myself included, it comes down to that piece of paper that comes in the mail every month. What can they expect for rates and the benefit to the merger? Those expectations. What can they expect?
So I can speak to that as well. So through the first 10 years, what we'll be doing is no more than the inflationary increase allowed by the Ontario Energy Board. We're normally at the 5-year mark, we would go back in and seek for an increase in some rates above inflation. We won't do that over the first 10 years. It'll be just rates will go up by that inflationary increase. As we get the company organized, figure out some of the synergies, at the end of that 10 years, all of the synergies and savings we've been able to achieve then will go back to customers. So our customers should see a reduction rate over what they would have seen under a standalone type basis. And I think the stability you mentioned is very important. In the life cycle of Waterloo North Hydro and the companies that made it up, we were a number of small little PUCs back in 1905. There was 4 of them through this area that in 1978 merged, and we took over a bunch of Ontario Hydro area. Probably took us about 10 years to get all of that running smoothly as we put all this stuff together, but we became Waterloo North Hydro, and we're well recognized in the province as a leader in a number of things we do. And we've been able to keep our rates with all the advances we've done about middle of the road in the province. So this next step keeps us stable for probably the next 3-4 decades, I believe we're going to be very strong. We'll be number 7 in the province in size. Technically, we'll be very strong and leaders in the province in that size. And what we're able to do is find savings that we can pass on to customers and lower rates. So I think it's setting us up in many ways for the benefit of the customers and keeping a strong, stable company for the next years to come.
Okay, thank you. And my last question, if it's okay, it's more a curiosity, hypothetical. If let's say January 1st, Santa sends electric vehicle to everybody in Waterloo region. Is Waterloo North Hydro, as they are, would they be able to accommodate the surge from people all powering up at the same time and charging their vehicles? And do we have that infrastructure in place at this time, or is that something that, you know, through this merger will be better set up to accommodate, you know, when people are 100% on EV?
So we are set up to take what we think the growth will be, even in what most EV aficionados are projecting as a rapid growth. If Santa comes along, gives everybody a new one, we're probably in trouble. But over time, we're set up with our infrastructure to take over the next few years. And as our systems age and get rebuilt, we keep those things in mind, and we'll be doing more rebuilding as we go along. And part of the future that comes along has to do with battery storage, where we'll be looking at what's called non-wires alternatives, where instead of a long feeder out somewhere, we might be putting battery storage or small generators that'll help with those things. So we believe we're taking it into account. We hope people adopt EVs because we want to help with climate change and help we can do to help the community fight climate change. So I think those are all good things, and those are parts of the business that we really want to see progress over the next few years. Having the bigger company is going to set us up much better to work on that and hopefully help people with things like EV chargers and where we can put them.
Okay, thank you very much.
So I'm not sure if I should be looking under my tree or in the driveway. Are there other questions? I guess I would just add, there's 2 pieces to your question, Councillor Merlehan. One is the distribution and those parts of it that Rennie talked about, but the other part is the actual generation of the electricity, which is a whole other issue that we won't get into tonight. Councillor McMillan.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you. Along similar lines, this is a question that has been answered before, but for the benefit of people who might not have seen all of those meetings, you've talked in the past about how this merger will make us better able to initiate climate change mitigation efforts. Could you maybe fill us in a little bit about how that is more possible through this merger?
I would be happy to, through you, Mayor Shantz. Some of the things that we're looking at is the new technologies that will do local generation or battery storage, so we can make use of some of the central generation that sits idle through the night, do some battery storage to charge batteries through the night and then discharge them through the day. And that will help us not have to bring on some of the more expensive and likely carbon generating fuels of generation that part of the central generation through the day. So it'll help us in terms of some of those aspects. I believe as we move along, and we're just starting to get there with some of the things with solar arrays, we should be able to have solar arrays much more widespread. And by having this company put together, we can help do monitoring of generation and monitoring of solar arrays to help those who can do the generation and those who could use the generation have it done locally instead of having it come to us through transmission lines. So all of those things will help reduce emissions from central generation. It'll help reduce the strain on the transmission system. And as these new technologies come along, we'll have the resources to not only investigate them, but perhaps even invest in them and help bring these things along faster than what they would otherwise.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, thank you, Brainy and David. I think that's all. And would someone like to move the recommendation? I am not going to read it. It's about 2 pages long, but essentially the recommendation is to move forward with the merger. Councillor Martin, you'd like to move it? It's seconded by Councillor Shantz. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you very much. And thank you, Mr. Gatchen and Mr. Peters for coming and speaking to us this evening. And I'll say in public what I've said privately is thank you, Rennie, to you and your team for all the work you've done. This has been an awful lot of work, and I know you've all put in many extra hours to bring it to this point, and we're not quite done yet. So thank you.
Thanks very much for your support.
Yes, thank you, Council, for your support and your patience as you read through all these reports. And we do appreciate your support going forward with us. Thank you very much. And have a good Christmas to all of you.
Yes, and to you too. Okay, we have one delegation this evening, and this is one that Councillor Merlehan and I have a conflict of interest on, but I'm going to read the instructions to the delegations. Mr. Dreger, I'm sure you don't need these, but I'm going to read them anyway. Please leave your video and microphone off until you are called on to speak. You've got it on. That's all right. I'm good with that. Each speaker has a maximum of 7 minutes. There will be a timer on the screen, and you will hear a warning when you have 1 minute and when your time is up. Once you are finished, please turn your microphone and camera off again. You may listen in to the rest of the meeting or leave when you want. And council will hear from all speakers and ask questions of clarification. And then council discussion and debate will start when all speakers on the topic have finished, which is 1. We just have 1. And I'm going to excuse myself, and Councillor Redekop is going to take over for this item. And I think Ms. Freeze is going to be available after the delegation to answer any questions from a staff point of view. So Councillor Redekop, the floor is yours.
Hey, go. Welcome, Dan. So I'll give it over to your presentation.
Okay, I will share my screen, and hopefully you are seeing a Spruce Lawn logo on your screen right now.
Yep, it's there.
Okay. All right, thank you. So I'll begin then. So Spruce Lawn Apartments for Seniors in St. Jacobs. I suspect you're quite familiar with it. They've been working for the past 5 years to create new affordable seniors housing in St. Jacobs. And like a lot of things, this can't be done alone. It really needs to happen in partnership. So we've had on and off again conversations with Spruce Lawn for a number of years, going back to 2015 and 16 when Manor Homes started building in St. Jacob or in Elmira. And so it's two organizations coming together to hopefully try and achieve what one couldn't do by itself. And on November 30th, we took a big step in moving towards that, where Manor Homes took responsibility for the Spruce Lawn board, and we will actually be moving towards a full amalgamation of the two organizations on January the 31st. So we're very excited about that. The existing Spruce Lawn board will continue to be engaged in the process as committee members. We had a meeting this morning about that, and we're all excited to be moving together on this project. But we can't do it alone either. And so that's where the region of Waterloo comes into play. We actually had a joint proposal to the region back in the spring to try and obtain funding for this project. And we were successful jointly in securing $2.7 million of federal provincial funding for 20 out of the 28 new units that we want to build. CMHC has been actively involved as well, going back almost 5 years with an investment of $26,000 in seed funding to help do some of the early exploratory work, as well as a loan for that as well. And so it's always through partnership, and we certainly consider the Township of Woolwich to be a key partner in all of this as well. And you've been involved in terms of helping through the planning process, and there was some land involved as well that I think you helped contribute to make sure that they could get the package of land together to do the redevelopment. So thank you for your early work on that. In regards to Spruce Lawn and Menno Homes, we're both in the affordable housing sector, and this housing continuum chart is likely familiar to you, but to really shorten it up, both Menno Homes and Spruce Lawn provide housing, rental affordable housing for people who don't need heavy supports, but both organizations believe that supports in addition to lower rent is important. And so they do it through a committee, a tender loving care committee, they call it. Menno Homes also has a community nurse that we can now extend to the tenants at Spruce Lawn to make them be able to access that service. So since I last spoke to council in maybe 2015 or 16, there has been some growth. We finished the apartment building at the Foundry, and now with the addition of Spruce Lawn, the combined organizations have a footprint of 63 homes in Woolwich Township. The Spruce Lawn was constructed in 1985 through some federal provincial money back then. Currently has a 30-unit building there, 28 one-bedroom apartments and 2 one-bedroom apartments, and they rent at very affordable rates yet compared to today's market of $718 per month for the one bedrooms and $887 for the 2-bedroom units. And what we're looking at doing here is adding on a 28-unit addition to the existing building. It's a pretty big undertaking, especially in this market, but it's almost going to double the size of that project in St. Jacobs and bring some much needed affordable seniors housing to Woolwich Township. So we're pretty excited to be at this stage and all the tremendous work that the Spruce Lawn Board has done to get us here. The new addition, as I said, will be 28 units. It will be barrier-free in design, and there will be some ultra barrier-free units within it for folks who have wheelchair accessibility challenges. The 21-bedroom apartments that are being supported by the region will have rents that 8 of them will be set to the ODSP shelter allowance, starting at $497 a month. So quite deep affordability there. We also have 12 that will be at $809 a month, approximately compared to the CMHC average of $1,076. And then some 2-bedroom apartments that are getting closer to market, but actually still quite affordable in the current market. And so we can't do all this and get those low depths of affordability without some assistance. We've had it from the region, from CMHC, and now we're looking to Woolwich Township. You took a big step 2 years ago when you passed this bylaw, 45-2019, and said that affordable housing as defined here would not have to pay development charges. So I want to thank you for that proactive approach. In conversation with staff, my understanding is that you are required to approve this project for that. Staff believes we do qualify for that, but I am here today to ask for an official approval for this development charge credit. In addition to that, this is my request here then. So in addition to that, I also want to talk about what's happening in other municipalities as well. We have the city of Kitchener, and I provided you with a copy of their building permit fee exemption. It's interesting how the municipalities are approaching this. They had a great meeting last night at the city of Kitchener where they actually invested $2 million into a fund to help relieve affordable housing of development charges. So it looks like you're both going to end up at the same place. You're just going about it differently. Woolwich came out with development charge credits first, and I'm asking for some exemption on the building permit side of things. City of Kitchener currently does building permits, and they're now investing in the development charge side of things. Together, it makes a big difference. And so for us, on the building permit side of things, we've already invested $26,000. We've got a $39,000 bill coming up through demolition and building permits. And my request is that you also consider exempting us from the bills that have yet to be paid so that we might be in alignment with the city of Kitchener and collectively create some new affordable housing in the township of Woolwich. I think my time's almost done, but I'll stop there and see what questions you might have.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Dan. Any questions for Dan and his proposal? Councillor Shantz?
Thank you, through you, Chair, to Mr. Dreger. So am I reading this correctly that you're not looking to get the $26,000 back? You're just looking for the exemption of the 39,000 going forward?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor McMillan, go ahead. You're muted still.
Thank you, Chair. I was wondering what credits and exemptions were in place when you completed the foundry, if any. I wasn't on council back then.
Yeah, through you, Chair. I don't believe there were any other than we received some for the soil remediation that was done at the foundry at the time. We completed construction of the foundry in 2017. It had been obviously a foundry prior to that, so there was remediation that had to happen, and there were credits related to that, but there were no development charge credits or building for permit fee credits at that time.
Councillor McMillan, you have follow-up?
Yeah, not for the delegation, but if there's no other questions for the delegation, I do have some other questions.
Okay.
Are you okay with that?
Yeah, I'm okay with that. Are there any other questions to the delegation? Okay, seeing none, thank you, Dan, and thank you for Menahome's continued work in Woolwich Township to make housing affordable. Thank you very much.
Well, we don't do it alone. We live in an extremely supportive community. Like the foundry, there will be a capital campaign for this one as well. And we know that the township and the residents will respond to support this. So thank you to you for the opportunity to speak, and to the Township of Woolwich for the tremendous support we've received over the various years.
Okay, thank you. And now we'll hear from a staff perspective of this proposal. Deanne, go ahead.
So we did get a chance to look at what the other municipalities of Kitchener and Cambridge were doing. And from our understanding, they provide a DC deferral, not a DC exemption. So based on that, and they do provide the other fee exemptions for planning and building fees. So based on that, we think that the Township of Woolwich approach with the DC exemption of approximately 192,000 is quite significant and quite a lot more than the other municipalities are already providing. We do think that the building permit fees are needed to recover staff time to review the permits and do the inspections, but we feel that the development charges, that exemption that's provided is a lot more than other municipalities are already doing.
Oh, a question for you. What amount would that be?
The development charge exemption is approximately 192,000.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for staff? Councillor McMillan, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Through you. Yeah, my question was going to be, how much has staff interacted with Menahomes up to this point on this? Ms. Fries had some information there, so it sounds like there's been some, and you're prepared a little bit. If it was the will of council to explore options, what would that look like? And are there other options? I guess just thinking off the top of my head, is it possible to have, market-based development charges offset the further costs that you talked about with staff time to review those permits and things like that? So yeah, kind of a two-part question. How much work has already gone into that? And are there options if it was the will of council to pursue it going forward?
All right, so the development charges bylaw does provide that exemption, provided they meet the affordable housing definition. So I don't know if there's an option within the development charges bylaw, and I know that other staff are on the line that might be able to answer that better as well. But I don't think there's an option to charge part of the development charges. I think it's based on the wording in the bylaw. If they are exempt because they're affordable housing, then they are exempt, and we don't charge at all any portion.
Yeah, sorry, I was unclear there. I meant you talked about having to have the permit fees to recover staff time, which we can all understand. My question was, could the market-based DCs from other projects be used to recoup that cost rather than the permit cost on the affordable housing projects?
So it's my understanding that the building division is self-funded. So the permit fees that go in for the building division pay for building staff to inspect and to process the permits. We can't transfer DC money from other developments into the building budget to accommodate their time.
David, you have some comments to make? Oh,
My apologies. So I would like Richard to speak to, I think, another piece of pertinent information that council needs to be aware of with respect to the good decision that council made a number of years ago with respect to the development charges. And the fact is that this does have to be paid back over a 20-year period. So while, you know, the exemption was definitely the right move a number of years ago, council wanted to show leadership in terms of supporting affordable housing. There is a fiscal requirement to pay back that. And I think, in fairness, also, Councillor McMillan, to answer your question, Mr. Dreger and I have had probably a handful of conversations on this subject. And he was also given advance notice that our assessment of the situation, and again, it would be in council's hands, was that the only other municipality that is going as far as the township of Woolwich in terms of the level of fiscal support for affordable housing, outside of, I guess, Mr. Dreger's discussions about Kitchener's latest discussion, is the fact that prior to that, it was only the region and the township of Woolwich that were actually going to the extent of waiving development charges. As Mr. Dreger outlined tonight, most others were only doing a deferral of DCs, but were waiving planning application and building permit fees. So as Ms. Fries mentioned earlier, it's our recommendation to council that your decision a number of years ago, the right one, does have a substantial fiscal impact, which does need to be paid back. And she's also articulated the reasons why we're recommending that the building permit fees remain in place. But ultimately, as always, it's your decision as to how far you wish to support this particular project. And Richard, if you could just outline the specifics around the payment that's required over the 20 years.
Yeah, absolutely. See, Mr. Chairman, the recent changes to the Development Charges Act actually enabled sort of developments, you know, that have an affordable housing nature to it, to be able to be paid over a 20-year period. I think prior to that, you know, with us having this exemption, you know, we obviously would have been then required to repay that back. We would have had to repay that $192,000 like in one shot. So thankfully, with the changes to the Development Charges Act, we actually can spread that payment over a 20-year period. So that works out to roughly about $9,600 that we're going to have to fund from some other source, whether that is another reserve, whether that's another reserve fund that we can tap into, or even just something we would be adding into a future operating budget from a tax-based perspective.
Councillor McMillan, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. So would there be an opportunity, or there is an opportunity, but if we were to ask staff, is there a way that we could further support? I hear staff saying that we're leading on supporting affordable housing, and that's awesome, and that was done before I got here. So hats off to staff and council who did that before I got here. Great job. But then we can look around and say we're leading, but we're still in crisis. And there are still seniors that can't afford to live, and there's still lots of people who can't afford to live. And can we do more? And I wonder, you know, if there was an opportunity to refer this to staff to bring a report to council, or if there was an opportunity to put this on an agenda item for a discussion amongst staff and council to explore opportunities to go further, recognizing how far we've come, but then also looking at the crisis that we're facing. And I don't know what the options are to recoup some of those costs that Ms. Freeze outlined. And obviously we do have to do that. But perhaps an agenda item where we have the opportunity to ask staff some of those questions would allow us to get some of that information. Is that something that staff sees as reasonable, or have you already gone down all of those wormholes and explored all of the opportunities, and this is pretty much where we can get to?
Go ahead, David.
Sorry about that again. So, I would say that, I would say a couple of things. First of all, I would say that we're trying to be mindful of the fact that in talking to Mr. Dreger, they are looking, I believe they need some decision, worst case, in early January on this subject. So when we were looking at bringing this to council, it happened rather quickly. And what we wanted to do was to get Mr. Dreger on behalf of Mental Homes on for this meeting. Staff did have a number of meetings internally to try and get to this recommendation tonight. And recognizing that this is a little bit different than if this project was just starting out, and there's certainly been some planning fees and building permit fees. Right now, we did do enough of our homework, I feel, that we were coming to say council made a substantial and great decision a number of years ago in terms of the level of support. In fairness to all of council, I would say, if you wish to go farther, ultimately those building permit fees, do not have to be paid back, not like the DCs. That is just your right as council to say, we want to go one step further. So in fairness, I guess my best response is, we've done our homework. We've looked at other areas, our neighboring area municipalities. We do go farther than most, but if council wants to go farther beyond the DCs and waive the building permit fees, that certainly is your option. But if council does need more information beyond this, certainly we can hope to address that as well.
What's Councillor McMillan, you want to make a comment?
Yeah, certainly the timing of this, I'm not going to ask staff to put a report together for the start of January when we got budget season. Obviously, that doesn't make sense. I don't think adding another agenda item in January when staff are putting the budget together makes sense. So I'm not prepared to ask for that tonight. So just that, I just wanted to put that before we went to any other questions. I'm not going to ask for that report during budget season.
Okay, any other? Councillor Shantz and then Councillor Martin.
Yeah, thank you through you, Chair, to Ms. Freeze. You talked about the deferral from other townships or cities of the DC charges. What does that look like, and what is that deferred over how many years?
It's my understanding that it's over the 20 years as well. It would just be a deferral that the applicant would pay, not the municipality.
Okay, thank you. And if we did waive the permit fees, the build would take what, a year or two? So it would not be something that would come out of one big lump sum. It would be spread over a couple of years. Would that be correct?
I don't know the answer to that, if they pay all the fees up front or not. Sorry, David, if you're able to answer that.
Yeah, no, the fees are paid up front, Councillor Shantz.
Okay. And that would just be a lot. That would just be a loss of income, more or less, kind of in-kind gesture rather than a dollar figure. Correct?
Councillor Martin, go ahead.
Thank you. First of all, let me say that Mental Homes is a great organization. It's an organization I believe in, that I've supported in the past, and they've certainly have some good projects in the region. But I'm not a big fan about waiving fees. I always believe that everybody should pay their own way. I built 2 houses in the last few years and certainly paid my fees, building permits, development charges. And Mena Homes probably being the exception. Most times when you waive fees, it puts money into the developer's pocket and it doesn't make housing any cheaper. Like I said, Mena Homes might be the exception. Last week at our meeting, and Fred, you weren't here, but you might have listened in.
Yeah.
We discussed the fact that we've got to build a new road and bridge in Breslau, and we're going to have to come up with $25 million in the next 10 years to fund that, which probably benefits other people more than it does Woolwich Township. So if we got that kind of expenditure and development charges that get passed on to whoever buys a house, again, I'm not a big fan of waiving fees. Now, to answer Councilor McMillan, can we go further? Yes, we can go further. Do what I have done. Get your checkbook out, send a check to them, which I've done on a couple of occasions, and help them fund their projects.
Okay, what are we looking, there's no motion with this delegation. What's the will of council? Councillor McMillan?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I would like to move that we put this on a future agenda item, second quarter of next year, to discuss this. I think this is a quickly changing issue. I think that when this bylaw that we're talking about tonight was passed in 2017, I think already the world has changed a lot since then. I think the housing crisis has gotten worse. Market price for housing has gone up. There's more people that are homeless. There's more people struggling with food insecurity and housing insecurity. And I think that Councillor Martin makes an excellent point that we should get out our checkbook as a private citizen. That's a duty that I have as a citizen. But I think we also have a role as council to play. And I think that having the opportunity to have a little bit more input from staff and opportunities to ask questions of staff is something that I would like. I think it's difficult when we're on December 14th to talk about something that needs a resolution by January to make that type of decision. So, apologetically to Meadow Homes, I'm not going to support the request tonight, but I do think as a council, I would like us to do more. And I would like to have the opportunity to work with staff to see what our best path forward there is. So I would like to move that we make this an agenda item in the second quarter of 2022 if staff thinks that is a time frame that is reasonable.
Go ahead, David.
So I think on one part of this, though, I want to be clear to council. It is both township staff and region staff's opinion, region housing staff, that this particular project meets the true definition of the development charges bylaw. Part of what was the ask tonight by Mr. Dreger and really staff is, would council be at the very least prepared to support confirmation that it meets the intent of the bylaw? That is staff and regional staff's interpretation. And, at least on that basis, give Meadow Homes the comfort that that is the case. And then it would only be a decision as to the second quarter as to whether there was more in which council wanted to do for this and other similar projects. Would that be in order? I would look to Councillor and Councillor McMillan.
Would you move that?
Yeah,
Councillor?
I would move that we confirm that this is an affordable housing project that should be exempt from the DC charges as according to the bylaw.
Yeah. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Shantz? Any other questions, comments? Councillor Martin?
Thank you. Am I correct then that these development charges will be paid back in the next 20 years? Am I correct saying that?
Yep.
Richard, said yes. And one thing I omitted before was that I want you to remember that whatever we do here, we're going to be asked to do again on probably 2-3 projects that are just around the corner.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McMillan?
Yeah, I'd love to make those 2 or 3 projects around the corner, 20 or 30 projects around the corner. We need it. The DC charges are paid back by us, right? Through other streams of revenue, not by the applicant. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. All those in favor of the motion, raise your hand. Okay, that's passed. Thank you very much for a good discussion. And Councillor McMillan, go ahead.
Yeah, now if I could move that agenda item in the second quarter of next year, if staff thinks that time frame is reasonable. And if there's a seconder, I have a question, Chair.
Okay, yeah, you have a seconder to that. Councillor Shant seconds. Okay, another comment. Councillor McMillan, go ahead.
Yeah, question to Mr. Brenneman. You said this project and others. I was under the impression if we were having a discussion second quarter and we made a decision at that time, it would only be future projects. Are you saying that door could still be open to this project if we were to, in May or June, decide to fund the permit fees through some other revenue stream, that this project could still take advantage of that?
Well, it would be my understanding, through you, Mr. Chair, to council, it'd be my understanding, unless Richard feels otherwise, that yes, if we had a motion of council, if somebody had paid the fees and you want to refund them as part of some policy that you implement, that would be a direction and approval by council that could happen. Just because somebody has paid doesn't mean that couldn't be refunded. Richard, do you feel differently though?
No, through you, Mr. Chairman, no, that I view the exact same way. And I think the good thing from this is that if the development proceeds forward in January of 2022, and we have a discussion at council, in that spring of 2022, you're still continuing within the same fiscal year. So that actually makes a lot of sense to be able to do that.
Okay, well, thank you all for a very spirited discussion on a very issue that's very important to all of us as we move forward as a community to help people who are less fortunate than most of us on the call. So thank you again very much. So I'll turn it back over to Mayor Shantz.
We haven't voted. We haven't voted yet, Chair.
Oh, sorry. All those in favor on the motion? Against? Oh, that's passed. Sorry. Thank you. Thank you again, Scott, for holding me to account. Okay, I'll turn it back over to Mayor Shantz.
Okay, unfinished business. We have fiscal sponsorship agreements, and are there any discussions on the resolution that we held over authorizing the mayor and clerk to execute fiscal sponsorship agreements with Kitchener-Waterloo Community Foundation and any other documents or agreements necessary to bring fiscal sponsorship agreements into effect, and to direct staff to notify council of any future fiscal sponsorship agreements which have been executed by placing them on the consent agenda for information purposes in the next council or committee of the whole package. Would someone like to move it, discuss it, have questions? Councillor McMillan?
I'll move approval of the consent agenda.
No, sorry, that was the resolution that's here on the.
Oh, I apologize. I thought you were asking for the consent agenda.
Sorry.
Just to be clear, that's for the support for Woolwich Gymnastics and Friends of God.
These were specifically for the Woolwich Gymnastics and the Friends of Hockey, but it was also pertaining to future ones as well.
Yeah. Now I got it. Sorry about that, Mayor. I'll move the motion as written.
Okay, thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Redekop, any discussion? All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Now we'll get to consent items. Okay, I see the recommendations from November 2nd, Committee of the Whole are on here, and Councillor Merlehan, you had a pecuniary interest on number 4, which was the Woolwich. So where does that stand, being we just passed the other resolution? Jeff?
Through you, Mayor Shantz, if you want, you could ask someone to move the entire consent agenda except the item 4 regarding Woolwich Gymnastics Club, and then do that one separately if you wish.
Do we need to do that separately, given we just passed that other resolution? It's cleaner that way, isn't it?
Yep, you can do it that way.
Understood. Yeah. Councillor Merlehan? Yes.
Yeah, through you, I'd like to also pull number 3 to discuss the Breslau East Connector Road.
Okay, so if I could have a motion on the consent agenda with the exception of number 3 and number 4, which are basically the recommendations from November 2nd, and then also the correspondence and the information items that are listed. Councillor Redekop and Councillor Shantz, all those in favor? And that's carried. Okay, let's do number 4, and then we'll do the discussion on number 3, if that's okay. So number 4 was the Woolwich Gymnastics Club request for funding support. And Councillor Merlehan had a conflict on this one. So Councillor Shantz. Are you moving it? Okay, seconder. Councillor McMillan, any discussion? All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay, Councillor Merlehan, you wanted to speak to number 3, the Breslau East Connector Road Environmental Assessment Preferred Alternative Recommendation. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. General comments on this one. I don't really know what I'm going to say on this, but I haven't really stopped thinking about this since we talked about it last week. And, you know, I had a couple of phone calls over the week to talking to interested parties. And I really think this needs a much wider discussion because this is a $30 million road, and in today's dollars, and it has huge implications on every home that's going to be built in the next, decade or so. You know, when you look at Thomasfield, and the only planning that I've learned about is just my time here on council. And I've picked up a lot of things, and planning has become a bit of an interest of mine. And back when Thomasfield was first proposed as a settlement, not building out Breslau, but building separately from Breslau, I wasn't paying that close of attention to that, but I see the implications today. About planning that separates a community right from the get-go. And now I feel like this connector road is a road that we're only building to fix a past planning mistake. When they went through the whole presentation and they talk about the different pillars and one of them being economics, I don't know why the economic angle wasn't just a deal breaker. 30 million for a connector road that, what are we connecting people to? Breslau, there isn't a downtown Breslau. There isn't a commercial area in the old part of Breslau. The future commercial area is actually across the street. It's going to be the Walmart. This road will have, zero benefit to the actual residents in Breslau. It'll be nice to, you can go for a walk or a trail ride or something like that. But I mean, as far as car traffic, I can't see people from Thomasfield using it, to go across town to what? And it's just way too much money. The biggest benefactor is going to be, the region sees this as a huge benefit to connect to a future GO station. But even in the last couple of years, I don't know if that GO station is really, is it a solid bet that's even going to be a thing? Transit has changed significantly in the last 2 years, and less people are using transit. And there's some new lines that have come on board that aren't getting the traction at all that they proposed the traffic would be there. It's just not there. So for us to pass this tonight, we set everything in motion then to start the next process, which is adding those DCs to homes immediately and starting to collect the money for this. But I don't think we can do that. And I don't think we should, because we'll lose any kind of leverage about talking to the other interested parties. So when the connector road was first talked about some 9 years ago, the developers were under the understanding that there wasn't going to be a bypass, that there was going to be gates up at a road. And you would go, the gates would come down when the trains came through, and you would drive across it. And now it's an overpass, which is, half the cost. It's $15 million. And, I don't think one penny of that should be borne on the future residents of Woolwich Township to the tune of $4,500. That is just the cost that really the province should be paying to administer train traffic travel. That is not going to be a benefit to anybody living in Woolwich, and especially, and I think about, we hardly heard from anybody. Thomasfield kind of showed up and did a bit of a presentation and raised some alarm bells about the future costs and everything. But we haven't heard from any of the developers. We've got like 4 subdivisions here in Elmira. We're going to be paying for this overpass and a road that has little benefit. And I'm sure they don't even know about it, that's going to get hit to future residents. So what I would be proposing tonight is that we sit on this and we wait to hear back from the region. And we wait to hear back from Metrolinx, who, through the province, should be paying for that overpass. Like $15 million, it doesn't make any economic sense for this road. And if we're just putting the road there to fix a past mistake of starting a community, far away from where our community was and not built out. I don't know the whole story about how that happened. I wasn't on council, and I haven't had enough time to go back and dig into that. I probably will go talk to our own staff at some point just to say, hey, how did we do that? How did that get passed here at Woolwich, that we thought this was a good idea? And how did the region also think that was a good idea? I don't know how that happened, and I'd like to know, because here we are trying to rectify that decision with a $30 million road. So out of all the issues that have come before council, I think this one is a very, very serious, that will have wide-ranging implications. And if we pass this tonight, we will have zero leverage to to get the rightful people to be paying for this infrastructure, because it's not Woolwich Township future residents. And we talk about development charges. I mean, I was listening in, and the 192,000 for Spruce Lawn. I mean, I had a customer, not a customer, a business resident that was asking me about development charges, and he put up a building, and it was a modest building. And it was $100,000 for DCs, and that's pretty significant for a business or retailer. That's a lot of things that you got to sell to make up $100,000 on top of already expensive building. So I'm really asking everyone to kind of reconsider their position on here as putting it on hold until we can get some more answers, because I think this is a really big mistake.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Shantz.
Thank you. And I do have to agree with some of the things that Councillor Merlihan had said. And I think when we entered this, we weren't looking at, or we weren't thinking, at least I wasn't thinking, that this was going to be a $30 million project. But it did creep up on us for sure. And I think at the very least, I would like to at least look at changing that overpass to just a pedestrian overpass. And if in the future we have to make it a overpass for vehicles, then we decide how that's going to happen, and whether, like Councillor Merlihan says, the region comes to the game to help pay for that, or how that happens. So I would be in agreement to put this on hold for now.
Okay, Councillor McMillan.
Thank you, Mayor Shantz, through you. I appreciate the opportunity for a sober second thought at this. My concern's not with development charges. I think I've expressed that enough. My question would be, if we were trying to build a community in Breslau and somebody said, here's a $30 million check, improve the community in Breslau, is this how we would do it? I think Councilor Merlihan talked about, is this road going to be used? And I think, it's a road between two residential subdivisions, no real commercial properties or commercial area. So what are people going to get on the road for? And I think that if somebody were to say, here's a blank check, or here's a check with $30 million written on it, build a community, I don't think we necessarily choose a road between two subdivisions as the way to build the community in Breslau. It's a noble effort. It's something we need to do. We have created just a large Kitchener subdivision in Breslau. I question whether this is the solution or not. So if somebody put a motion on the table to defer this decision, I'd support that motion.
Does staff want to weigh in at all on the process? Jared?
Thank you, Mayor Shantz. I think a bit of information for council's benefit. Regarding Councillor Merlihan's comments about planning, I think something important to understand is that we only received a local service policy that was adopted, I believe, through our 2017 Development Charges Amendment. So planning prior to that, so we're within the settlement boundaries of Breslau, therefore it is slated for development, and as such, obviously developers do their marketing studies and propose their plans of subdivision. It flows through a process. Everything's negotiated at that point. We didn't have a local service policy that squarely identified what is a local service, AKA what is the developer's responsibility versus the broader goods responsibility through development charges. So we do have a local service policy now. And without going back in time, it is quite possible that if we had a local service policy at the time that Breslau was building out, This road very well may have been a local service to Thomas Field and would have been part of their development. That would have been part of the approval and would have been contained within their subdivision agreement. That's speculative, but that's exactly what a local service policy does. It looks at the broader good in relation to that proposed development. I think that's very important for council to understand, that this wasn't, I would suggest, a poor planning decision. This was just using the tools we had at our disposal. Woolwich is growing exponentially. There's lots of pressures, and I think that staff, certainly the planning department, has done a miraculous job, quite frankly, with the geographical area they're dealing with, all the intricacies, and the limited staff they have. So, I think they've had to, quite frankly, do a lot of this on the fly. And we have wonderful developers. There's no question. We have good relationships with our development community. I think that's very important to note as well. So this was identified through the Breslau secondary plan, right? This was looking at how Breslau is to develop. And that's where this flowed from. So this was identified, and we've spent close to, I believe, $300,000 on this environmental assessment. We knew it was large. And it was all about bringing and connecting the communities of Breslau. Breslau is going to continue to grow. And we have an opportunity, I would say, to provide this connection from old to new. I'm not a planner, and I don't want to speak out of turn by any means, but I think that as I think council, I think staff have an opportunity to look at how Breslau can develop going forward. Multimodal transportation. I can think if you had a community member living in one neighborhood and you wanted to travel to another, we have an international airport, we have bus routing potential. I mean, right now, the only way to connect the two would be down what's Highway 7 currently. We know the new Highway 7 is going to come. And that's really the intent. I just wanted to give that bit of information to council before making this significant decision. So it wasn't a mistake, I would suggest, in the planning aspect. It was the fact that we didn't have the necessary tools, which we now do. So you wouldn't see things like this likely occur, and we look more holistically and have the ability to deal with that as developments come online.
Okay. Thank you. Does just a second, Councillor Schanzel and McMillan, I'll get to, but I do have a question. Perhaps it's for Ms. Freeze in terms of deferral and where we would go with that. I think we haven't said no to it. I think we're saying we want to just give it a little more consideration. I think that's what I'm hearing from council. Dan?
Is the question about deferring the, I think this actually might go back to Jared. Sorry.
It's Jared. Sorry. Okay. You're off the hook. And Jared, you're on.
I'm sorry, Mary Shantz, could you repeat that question? I apologize.
Sure. Just the implications of deferral.
I guess the implication that I would see to you is that just we wouldn't have the ability to collect development charges for anything at that point. I guess we do need to make a decision on the environmental assessment as far as are we satisfied with this? I mean, one thing we could consider is if council makes a decision to say, yes, we think a connector road needs to occur, I think that's step one. If they say no, I guess we're sort of in limbo as far as what the answer is. The EA does require a conclusion. So I guess that's part of the issue. If council elects to support the connector road, it doesn't mean council has to move forward with it. I think that's another important piece. And we do have a DC amendment that we will be coming back to council with in 2022. And we can have further discussion at that time. That would likely elicit a greater response from the development community on the development charges background in general. I think that's really the place to have that discussion about development charges, what those cost implications would be. I think we would have much more information at that point and have that good discussion at that time. And then council can make the decision if they so wish to choose to do that. And again, the EA is valid for 10 years. And it may be this council, could be another council that decides to not proceed with it. But I think we do need an answer on exactly the EA. Do we want to connect a road or not? I think that's first and foremost. After that, how do we want to fund it? or when do we want to build it? The only piece I would add to is I think to funding. If it is council's will and council did want to connect a road between the communities, even though it is slated for development charges right now, if there were grant monies provided or upper government funding provided, that could be used to offset development charges if council so wished. So I think that's an important piece to understand as well, is that while it's proposed right now to be 100% development charges, any upper government funding would be returned dollar for dollar, and that would be dealt with at a future reconciliation through the development charges.
Okay, thank you. And just one more question to throw out there, and that is, it's been said, and we realize we don't have, excuse me, a commercial area in Breslau. We've sort of set aside Woolwich Street, but it's not really in any sense a commercial area at this point. Could a connector, either this road or another road, could that connector road become a commercial corridor for the town of Breslau, essentially a downtown?
Sorry, Mayor Sean. So that's it's a valid question. I think I'm just looking at the settlement limits, and forgive me, this is likely a planning question that we have to come back with. But I think there is potential, except for right now at this juncture in time, probably not. Just the way I see the settlement boundaries in Breslau. But maybe Deanna, sorry to ask you that question if you were able to help out on that.
Yeah, so I guess there's not a quick answer to that. We'd have to look at the overall planning for the area. The region is in the process of doing their regional official plan right now, which may add more land to the settlement area as well. So there's more planning to be done in the area and around the airport. It's hard to say whether or not this would be a commercial collector or where the commercial downtown or commercial area would be in Breslau. There are some lands that are zoned for commercial, but I can't give you a more fulsome answer than that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Shantz, and then Councillor McMillan, I think you had your hand up as well.
Thank you. Through you to Jared. And I can't remember the terminology used about new roads and subdivisions, but does that mean that Breslau Properties would be paying for the road from Dolman Street, or I guess Woolwich Street, out to Fountain Street, or would that still be part of this DC charge on this?
Through you, Mayor Shantz, right now, it is Breslau Properties subdivision development that would be responsible for the extension of Dolman Street from Woolwich Street to Fountain. That's correct. And then this would be the next piece. So the road would be built over time and in sections. Obviously, it's not a lot different than the Ottawa Street extension, as it's being built by development. Now, the difference there is that will be a regional road at some point in the future. At this point, this would look like to be a township road, and it is contemplated as such. But it will be built in stages through development, and DC's is proposed for the piece that's before you tonight, from Fountain Street across the tracks into the Thomasfield subdivision.
Okay, and then just to follow up on all of that, I know I'm a proponent for not throwing dollars away, but I know that a number of years ago when they crossed Margaret Street, the tracks on Margaret Street, they put that bridge in and they only put it in for a single track. And I was surprised that they wouldn't have sprung for a double track there. It seemed short-sighted. But here we're putting 5 tracks in, and that's obviously going to increase the cost of that bridge immensely. And if we would take that down to a 1 track underpass, what would that do to that cost? And you probably can't answer that, but it just seems like that's going a little overboard. I can see maybe 2 tracks, but 5 just seemed unreasonable maybe at that point.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Shantz, to Councillor Shantz. So I'm not privy to the exact number of tracks. I apologize for that, but it is not simply because you are having a crossing over a railway. You are not certainly doubling the costs just because your span is wider. It doesn't work that way. So to us, really, a crossing is a crossing. I think that's the cost. Whether it's for 1 track or 4 or 5 tracks, to us, we don't see that as a significant increase to the overall project at all. To your point, it would be good planning, though. You're right.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor McMillan?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Through you, I appreciate Mr. Poupe's history lesson there on how we got to where we got, and certainly, you know, not meaning to point fingers on the people in the past or what has happened, but I guess just looking forward, my question is still the notion of trying to connect the communities is good, but do we think this would work? You know, like what kind of rationale and background have we done to say, yeah, you know, an auto route between two bedroom subdivisions is going to connect it to?
Through you, Mayor Shantz, to Councillor McMillan. Difficult. I think what I would, just in thinking, and because I'm a bit, I was part of the Woolwich Street reconstruction project, as part of that process and dealing with Metrolinx at the time, we had to do a deep dive into the history, and there was an Indigenous trail that went from Dover Flour Mills in Preston, and it went all the way up to Snyder's Flats Road, and in between Breslau was just a forest. So I think for as long as we've been, there have been trails and walk, you know, it's been important. Transportation routes have been important. We would see this as a transportation route for sure, a significant and very important one that could convey a lot of different modes of transportation. I think that's the important piece too. We're cognizant of that. We can have walkers, joggers, cyclists, you know, anything you could think of. We get those Lime scooters potentially coming down the pipe too. Also cars at this juncture. Those will be likely electric at some point. Buses. There's lots of reasons, I guess, for transportation corridors. And we do see this, staff certainly see this as a valuable connector, and one that has been endorsed through the Breslau secondary plan, as well as connecting communities essentially is what you're doing.
Councillor Merlehan?
Yeah, I'm prepared to put a motion forward to defer the EA until the future and refer the report back to staff to initiate discussion with the region and Metrolinx to discuss funding options for this road.
Okay, is there a seconder for that? Councillor Shantz? Discussion? Councillor McMillan?
Thank you. Yeah, I'll support the motion. I like the first part of the motion. I'm not sure we need to explore funding options until, like we've talked about, what is this even necessary? Mr. Poupe talked about transportation corridors existing long before cars and long before any of us, but they connect things. They connect residents to trade. They connect, you know, different communities for the purpose of trade. They move goods and services along lines. They generally don't just go between two places that you desire to bring together. There's places that need to come together for a purpose, and that builds a traffic corridor. So I like the first part of the motion. I'll support it either way, but I'm not sure that we need to explore future funding options until we know that this road will actually connect the communities. I think there's probably other things we could do that would bring the people of Breslau together more than just trying to artificially make it happen with a road.
Okay. Anyone else? Councillor Martin?
Thank you. Through you to Jared. If we defer this, how does that affect you with what you're doing?
Through you, Mayor Shantz, to Councillor Martin, I guess we would be essentially in limbo and not closing the EA, or we would need to, I guess, bring further information back for council to make a decision. And to Councillor McMillan's point, we probably do need an answer as far as what we're going to do. It doesn't have to be this evening. We can defer and come back with, I guess, the needs and rationale for the corridor. And if it's council's desire that there isn't one, I guess that would be the answer to the EA. It's not required. We've gone through an environmental assessment. It was deemed to not be required, and that would be the answer. Or it could be council's decision that they do want to implement it, and it's related to timing or funding. I think there could be lots of other things, but I think we probably need to go away and discuss, certainly with our engineering consultant, and discuss internally the additional information that council may be requiring. Regarding just on, if I may, on the discussion piece though, was I want council to be aware there has been quite lengthy discussions with both Metrolinx and the region regarding the GO station component. And I would suggest that at this point it is the provincial government's stance that they've solidified the position as far as how GO station works in the province of Ontario at this point, that it is to be paid for by the development community.
Okay, I guess my question, usually a deferral is to like time and place. So is there, you've heard the discussion, Jared, is there, how much time would you need to bring it back if we say in the first quarter 2022, or council, what are you looking for in terms of when to make the final decision on this? Councillor McMillan.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, for me, it's not a discussion. I don't think for Jared to go away and come back. For me, I think it's a planning discussion. Like, how do we connect to residential communities? Is there, we've heard that maybe this road could become a commercial corridor. Maybe Woolwich Street is going to be a commercial corridor. Maybe if Woolwich Street is a commercial corridor, this connector road would bring the people from the new community down to the old community. But for me, that needs to be fleshed out a lot more before we know whether or not this road will actually work. So I think Jared's done his job and said this is the road and how it should be built, and what he recommends. For me, I don't think Jared could bring back more information. For me, it's, do we need a road here? And for me, that's planning. So I guess, yeah, maybe I don't support a deferral for Jared to go away and do more work, because I don't think he necessarily has the answers to my questions.
Councillor Merlehan.
Yeah, through you, the comments from the Thomasfield representative last week, regarding basically setting up the Metro or the GO station, and then they pay for it all and then turn over the keys. They said that's not going to happen. They're not prepared to pay for it. The economics don't make sense for the model that they created like over a decade ago, and Metrolinx changed the rules and changed how you pay for it. I mean, there's been countless politicians going, yay, we're going to have this GO station, and all sorts of announcements have been made. But then when it comes down to it, I mean, you're going to make the developer pay retroactively for something that he didn't agree to that, and they're not going to provide the land for that. So that was his own words in the last meeting. So I mean, I think we need to have a further discussion with more of the developers. And I know the ones I spoke to were kind of all hemming and hawing on the road, and it could go either way, and they were fine. And then it was the costing. It's just the economics just don't make sense. And then you look at the benefit for the cost, and again, it doesn't make sense. So that all has to be played together. So if the region sees this connector road, because it'll connect to the GO station as a regional necessity, then they need to be speaking to us now and coming to the table with how we pay for this, because it really shouldn't be Woolwich residents on the hook for this. This is region-wide and province-wide connector, and it can't be borne all on us. And And if we can press pause right now and get that information and get people talking about it, I mean, this will hold things up, but you know, that's okay. We need to get the answers for this, because if we go ahead right now the way it is, we're you know, we're just setting the future up for not very good for trying to get people to come afterwards to help pay.
Just to be clear in the discussion, this is looking to DCs, not to the tax levy for payment. But Ms. Fries, go ahead. Deanne, sorry.
Through you, Madam Mayor. So just a few things on a few of the points that were raised. So the justification for why this connector road is needed, I think, was explained in the Breslau secondary plan when that was supported by council, and also the endorsement by council to initiate the EA process to determine that location for that connector road. That said, if there's interest to bring back some more information about the planning rationale, I don't have a problem doing that in the second quarter. Also, just in response to the GO station, we are right now working with regional staff and looking at other properties and other opportunities for the GO station that may or may not be on the Thomas Field lands. The justification for the paying for the GO station, that can be determined on a different development where they could incorporate densities to pay for that station. In the Thomas Field situation, because the rules changed partway through, that's why they weren't able to build those densities to support and to fund that type of a station. So we are working with them, with the region, with Metrolinx to try to figure out alternative locations and costing for that. But I would consider that separate from the EA process here for the road alignment, because regardless of where the GO station goes, that road is still needed.
Okay, thank you. So the motion on the floor is to defer the decision on this particular report. I think I heard Ms. Fries say she could come back with more information in the second quarter. 2022 would be a good time to have further discussion on that. So that's the motion on the floor. I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Thank you. That was 3 in favor, 2 opposed. Sorry. Oh, good question, Fred. Were you opposed or were you wanting to speak?
No, I suppose.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, thank you. Okay. We finished that section. We'll move on to staff reports. And the first report is a drinking water quality management standard annual report. Mr. Poupet, you're back again. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Shantz. Apologize here. Oh, I have got some technical difficulties. Give me one quick moment. Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. Thank you, Mayor Shantz, and through you to members of council. We find ourselves here again at the last council meeting of the year with our annual drinking water quality management standard report for 2020. I did look back and it was December 15th last year, so I guess we're a day earlier. Good for us. As council is well aware, you are the owners of the distribution systems. We have gone from a good news story. We have gone from 8 systems when I started with Woolwich. We are now down to 4, and there has been some good work done between our regional partner with the supply and expanding the integrated urban system, and that has improved. We would say the quality and the way we deliver water in the township. So that's a good news story to start with. This is a requirement per the Safe Drinking Water Act. And as a requirement of that act, it is a requirement for council to be fully aware of the system and its operations. We unfortunately did have a regulatory non-compliance identified in 2020. And or sorry, it was yes, in 2020. And we do want council to be aware we take that seriously. That is very important. And we did implement a series of corrective measures to ensure that we won't find ourselves in a situation like that going forward. You will also find in the 2022 water budget that we are proposing some technology to further help with that and eliminate some of the potential for error. As also part of our compliance, we do an internal audit to prepare us essentially for our external audit. Happy to report again with our external auditor. She has seen vast improvements, I would say, over the vast number of audits she has done. We did have 3 minor nonconformities. Those are listed in the report. Those are essentially some old documentation and us not completing, again, our reporting as timely as she would like. I can assure council that we don't expect to find ourselves here next year. We have already implemented our management review to occur in June of next year. Therefore, the reporting would be done at least in the 3rd quarter, much closer to the year that we are reviewing. And I think with that, oh, sorry, I apologize. We did have 10 incidences of adverse drinking water as well reported, and that is all contained in the report, as you know, our SOPs, as well as our management review and the minutes of that review. But I just wanted council to accept this report this evening for information and endorse the drinking water quality management standard materials documented in our management review for 2020.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for catching us up on these reports. Look forward to being even further ahead next year. Councillor Shantz.
Thank you. Through you to Jared. This is just an FYI or information that I would like to have. You referred to in your report a number of times about valve turning and how onerous that is. And I liken that to turning a tap, but it obviously is more onerous than that. So can you just explain that, what that is?
Sure. Through you, Mayor Shantz, to Councillor Shantz, it's important to exercise your water valves annually, just to ensure they don't seize up. It obviously controls flow within our systems. We have an interesting system in being in the region of Waterloo, because the region of Waterloo is responsible for supply, and that is done through transmission lines that are owned and operated by the region of Waterloo. And then, of course, our distribution system connects. So there's a number of interconnecting valves, and those are critical valves. Obviously, if we have a water main break, we need to isolate our systems to be able to repair them. So some valves, and I don't know the number, but multiple turns. You could probably get around 30, 50 turns, and I'm sure somebody on the call may have a more accurate number. Sometimes they're stiff. We have broken valves because we haven't been able to exercise them, just simply because they have seized. Sometimes they seize in the closed position. That's a problem. So it really is important to continue to maintain our systems. And I know there is, going forward, we will be making a request to council at a future budget year, not 2022, but at a future budget year for an automatic valve turner. Because right now you tend to have 2 people on what's a key. It's basically a T-bar that goes down to the ground, and they walk around and they count the number of turns, and then they walk around and count the number of turns backwards. And that's documented. We have a list of all of those valves and the number of turns to require a closure and an opening, and development, and all kinds of reasons to manage and operate our system. Unidirectional flushing of the water system is incredibly important, and that requires a lot of valve turning as well, which is where, if flow is going in one direction, we want to flow it back the other way to remove some of the buildup in the systems that occur over time, most notably in metallic mains. So there's a whole host of reasons that we need to operate and maintain our valves in good order.
Thank you. I assumed it was a little different than my shower, so thanks.
Yes.
But remember why you're getting water when you turn your tap on. Councillor McMillan.
Not me, I'm on a well.
Okay. Right, Councillor McMillan and then Councillor Merlehan. No, you didn't. Okay, Councillor Merlehan, go ahead. Did I miss somebody else? No, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mayor Shantz, to Mr. Poupé. I guess it sounds like, you know, the last bunch of years, Woolwich Township Water Department has more of a paperwork issue. And I understand, since Walkerton, that paperwork is the name of the game. I'm just wondering if you can just, saying as we're all getting a little bit of an education on our water system, the paperwork aspect, could you describe, as briefly as possible, the mountains of paperwork that staff are working through daily to provide the water quality? And then I guess on that front, our water system, I guess, is, we want to give some assurances that the paperwork problems do not translate into water problems for people, and that our drinking water is continues to be safe throughout our paperwork problems. So can you speak to those 2 points, please?
Sure, I'll try to do that through you, Mayor Shantz, to Councillor Merlehan. Our drinking water quality management standard is comprised of about 21 elements, and each element contains a number of standard operating procedures. It's crucial that documentation occur. We do residuals on a daily basis. So that is paperwork, and that needs to have a check and balance to it as well. And we need to attend to a number of sites throughout our large geography in Woolwich. So that adds a lot of pressure and staff time as well, of course. But the whole idea of really the Safe Drinking Water Act, as we all know, was the horrible incidences that occurred in Walkerton was essentially non-reporting. There wasn't reporting going on the system. So that is really the legislation. It requires you to do what you say and say what you do. It requires you to have processes in place that you follow through on, and that's why there's extensive auditing. So everything has a trail. One of the struggles too, you say paper, but what's happened through COVID is there's been some virtual audits that occur, and those that we've noticed are more onerous. And once we've gone there, you don't go backwards. So we used to have ministry inspectors come through and sort of leaf through booklets and so forth. Well, we've had a transition to now digitize all of those booklets and all of the terms and all of the documentation required to do. So that's been pressure and stress as well, because we weren't quite set up for that, I would suggest. So we've had to manage that, and that will be obviously going forward, is trying to digitize more and more of our quality management system going forward. I'm not, I don't have the intimate knowledge of the day-to-day, but I assure you it takes up a significant amount of staff time, both on our administrative assistants, on our lead hands, on our water supervisor, on our manager of operations. Absolutely every week there is some discussion or communication with regional staff or ministry staff or our internal auditor to ensure that we are compliant, and we continue to be. The region of Waterloo has wonderful drinking water. It is groundwater dependent. That's why we are so focused on ensuring we have good, sustainable groundwater sources. And it's really a hand in glove process with all the municipal partners in the region of Waterloo. And I think for that, we're all very proud of what we do, and the operators that attend and maintain our systems, because it's true, we turn on the tap and we have no idea, or we very much forget all that's involved to get us that clean and safe water, and that we are so fortunate and thankful to have in certainly in Southern Ontario, in the region of Waterloo, and in Canada for that matter.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, if there's no other questions, I think the recommendation is to receive the report. Would someone like to move it? Councillor Shantz and Councillor Redekop, all those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. All right, moving on to other business. Mayor's report on regional matters. I feel like all I've been doing at the region lately is budget, and that's probably true. Tomorrow is our final budget day, and expecting to have a final decision then. That meeting is at 4 o'clock tomorrow. I've had a lot of requests for a lot of emails anyway on the police budget, which is set. The region region basically can only approve or deny the bulk amount of the budget for the police services. The chief and the police board are the ones who set the actual budget and where all the items are being spent. But I think one thing I've tried to articulate is we're in a bit of a transition, and I think we all agree that upstream work is really necessary. And at the region, we're looking at housing first strategy. This year in particular, we've put a lot of money into housing, both in terms of program and in terms of capital costs. And if I have my numbers correct, we have over 600 new starts this year for affordable housing, when in the past we've often had about 50. So it's been significant work that we're doing, particularly on the housing first front. But there's a whole host of initiatives that are being done. And I'm hoping tomorrow that I'm going to see a nice summarized outline of what we're doing in terms of upstream initiatives and what those dollar investments are. And I don't think they're costs. I think they're investments in the community. So I guess that's my regional report. Are there any council reports or updates? Seeing none. Outstanding activity list. Anyone have anything there? Nope. There are no notice of motions, but before we do our bylaws, we have a new deputy clerk, Lydia Samello, and I'd like to introduce her. I'd like to, Jeff, did you want to introduce her? Clerk Smith will introduce her, and then we'll give her a chance to say a few words.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Shantz. So Lydia comes to us from both experience at the region and the city of Cambridge. She has over 30 years of experience in municipal government in various areas, and I am very excited for her to come on board, and I think she's ready to hit the ground running with, with things like records management and of course the 2022 municipal election, which we're gearing up for. So Lydia, if you want to just maybe say a few words and hello to council.
Good evening, Madam Chair and Council, and thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. I just want to thank Council for considering the appointment of Deputy Clerk, and I have been working here at the Township for a while now, and I have recognized that the Township fosters an environment of professionalism and collaboration and communication and teamwork. And I'm very happy to now join that team as a full-time employee. And I look forward to working with everyone on council. So thank you.
Welcome. Good to have you here. And now you get to learn all the intricacies of our backroom meeting technology. Okay. I need a motion that the following bylaws in the hands of the clerk be read a first, second, third time and finally passed, and that they be numbered as bylaw number 73-2021 to 75-2021, and that they be signed by the mayor and clerk and sealed with a corporate seal. And they are one, to appoint a deputy clerk, being Lydia. A bylaw to establish the parking of motor vehicles on private property, and a bylaw to confirm all actions and proceedings of council from December 14th. That's today. Okay. All those in favor, Councillor Martin, seconded by Councillor Shantz. All those in favor, and that's carried. Thank you. We do need to reconvene in closed session after we adjourn the meeting and stop the live stream. Before we do that, council would like to thank everyone who participated or tuned into the meeting tonight on our YouTube live stream. This is our last meeting for 2021, and council will be deliberating the 2022 budget during the second and third week of January. The following week, council will resume the regular council meeting schedule, which you can find posted on the website. And I will remind you that starting in January, our regular meeting nights will be Monday, not Tuesday. So that being said, do I need a motion? All right, I need a motion that the Council of the Township of Woolwich reconvenes in closed session on Tuesday, September 14th, electronically in accordance with Section 239 of the Municipal Act for the purposes of considering the following subject matter. And it is litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board. And that would be minimum maintenance standards matter. And further, that immediately following the closed meeting, the council meeting be adjourned to meet in regular session again on, says Tuesday, January 31st. Is the date the 31st or the 30th? I don't have a calendar. We're checking a calendar.
That would be Monday, January 24th.
Okay, not even close. Monday, January 24th, 2022. Good night. Are we good? Okay. Good night, everyone, but council stay here.